The mystery of the observer in. The silent darkness of the universe, an unseen force breathes life into reality. But what if that force isn't something out there, but something within us? Something that shapes the world with every thought, every glance, and every whisper of awareness. We exist in a reality governed by laws we barely comprehend, and yet in a way, we also hold the key to its unfolding. The question lingers in the air like a shadow: does the universe exist without us? Or do we, as observers, hold the very fabric of reality in our hands? Welcome to the enigmatic world of quantum mechanics, a realm where observation defies all logic. Here, particles flicker in and out of existence, appearing only when we look. They are both wave and particle, present and absent all at once. And it's our consciousness, our very awareness, that seems to collapse these possibilities into something real, something tangible. But is it really that simple? Take Schrödinger's cat, one of the most famous thought experiments in the history of physics. Imagine a cat locked inside a sealed box. Alongside the cat is a device that has a 50% chance of killing the cat, triggered by the decay of a radioactive atom. According to quantum theory, until we open the box and observe the cat, it is both alive and dead, existing in a state of superposition. It is our observation that forces the universe to choose, making one reality manifest and leaving the other as mere possibility. But is the cat really both alive and dead, or does the very act of observation create the reality we experience? This paradox is at the core of the mystery. What if reality as we know it is not as independent as we think? What if it depends on us, our awareness, and our ability to perceive it? This notion, once dismissed as pure speculation, now sits at the heart of quantum physics, blurring the lines between science and philosophy. The observer effect, a phenomenon where the act of observing a particle changes its state, suggests something profound. Reality may not exist until we witness it. At first glance, this idea seems almost preposterous. After all, what does it mean for something to exist only because we look at it? How can the universe, the stars, the galaxies, the laws of nature depend on our gaze, our mind? But quantum experiments reveal something even more bewildering. Particles seem to behave differently when observed, as though they know when they are being watched. It's as though the universe itself has a consciousness of sorts, bending in response to our awareness. To explore this, we must dive deeper into the strange, unsettling world of quantum mechanics. At its heart, it's a theory that defies all common sense. We are told that particles can exist in multiple places at once, and only when we observe them do they decide where they are. How can something be everywhere and nowhere at the same time? And yet, this is the reality of the quantum world, where uncertainty reigns supreme. But here's where things take a turn. The observer effect suggests that the boundary between subject and object, between the observer and the observed, may not be as clear-cut as we've always believed. Are we mere bystanders watching a universe unfold on its own? Or are we, in some inexplicable way, co-creators of the cosmos? This question brings us to the very core of our philosophical journey. Is consciousness itself the key to understanding the universe? This mystery, this cosmic dance between awareness and reality, has captivated thinkers for centuries. From ancient philosophers to modern physicists, the question of consciousness and its relationship to the material world has been a source of endless debate. Is our consciousness a mere byproduct of our brains, or is it something more profound, something that connects us to the very fabric of the universe? As we embark on this journey together, we will explore the tantalizing possibility that our perception of reality is not just a passive experience but an active force. a force that may shape the universe in ways we've only begun to understand. Along the way, we'll encounter mind-bending paradoxes, unanswerable questions, and a sense of awe that has the power to transform our very understanding of existence. At the heart of all this is the observer us, the conscious beings who stand at the crossroads of science and speculation, of fact and mystery. We are the key to unraveling the greatest mystery of all. Does reality exist independently of us, or are we its creators? The answer, as we will discover, is not as simple as it seems, but it is, without a doubt, one of the most profound questions we can ask. And it's a question that might just change everything we think we know about the world around us. The adventure begins now, as we venture deeper into the heart of the observer effect and the mysteries that lie beyond it. The quantum universe, observer-dependent reality. Imagine, if you will, a vast, infinite ocean, its waters constantly shifting, swirling with endless possibilities. Beneath its surface, countless waves rise and fall, each representing a different potential outcome, an infinite number of realities coexisting, waiting to be realized. But there's one catch: the ocean doesn't settle into any single state until we, the observers, look at it. In the world of quantum mechanics, particles behave much like this ocean, alive with infinite possibilities, all existing at once until we observe them. Only then do they collapse into a single, concrete reality. The universe, it seems, is a dynamic web of probabilities, and it is our awareness that pulls it into focus. At the heart of this mystery lies the concept of superposition. In the quantum world, particles are not confined to a single state or location, but instead exist in a superposition of all possible states. A photon, for instance, can be both a particle and a wave, occupying multiple positions in space at once. It is only when we observe the photon, when we measure it, that it chooses a specific state. This is what we call the collapse of the wave function, a mysterious event that brings the quantum world into the realm of certainty, if only temporarily. Think of Schrödinger's famous cat again. The cat is trapped in a box with a radioactive atom, and the fate of the cat hinges on the decay of that atom. Until we open the box, the cat exists in a state of superposition, both alive and dead at the same time. In quantum theory, this paradox arises because the atom is in a superposition of decayed and non-decayed states. It is the observer's act of measurement, whether we open the box or not, that forces the universe to choose between these two possibilities. The moment the box opens, the wave function collapses and the cat is either alive or dead. But it is our observation that gives this outcome meaning. Without our presence, there is no reality. This bizarre truth challenges everything we thought we knew about the world. Classical physics, the foundation upon which our understanding of the universe was built, tells us that reality is deterministic. The universe, as described by Newtonian mechanics, operates like a giant clockwork machine, its motions predictable and unwavering. In this view, the observer is irrelevant. The universe exists whether we are watching it or not, and our perception has no effect on the course of events. But in the quantum realm, the rules are completely different. Here, particles do not exist in a single state until we look at them. Instead, they dance between possibilities, a state of potential, until reality is forced upon them by our observation. The contrast between these two worlds, the classical and the quantum, could not be more stark. One is grounded in the tangible, the predictable, the measurable. The other is fluid, mysterious, and deeply entwined with the act of perception. Where classical physics sees certainty, quantum mechanics invites uncertainty. Where classical physics observes a universe that marches to the beat of predictable laws, quantum physics reveals a universe in which nothing is truly determined until we choose to observe it. The very fabric of reality in this sense is not an immutable truth, but a delicate, malleable thing, shaped by the delicate act of observation. Consider the double-slit experiment, one of the most famous demonstrations of this strange quantum reality. When particles, like electrons, are fired at a barrier with two slits, they behave like waves, creating an interference pattern on a screen behind the barrier. This suggests that each electron is going through both slits at once, as a wave until it is observed. When scientists place detectors at the slits to observe which path the particle takes, the interference pattern disappears, and the particle behaves like a classical particle, choosing one slit over the other. The very act of measurement, the simple act of observation, changes the behavior of the particle. It's as if the universe is waiting for us to look before it decides what to be. But what does this mean for our understanding of reality itself? If observation shapes the outcome, does it mean that reality only exists when we perceive it? And if reality depends on the observer, does that imply that there are countless potential realities, all vying for existence, and it is our awareness that pulls one into being? These questions are at the heart of the quantum mystery, and they echo through the corridors of both science and philosophy. We must ask ourselves, is reality truly a fixed objective thing that exists independently of us, or is it a malleable construct dependent on our consciousness? Classical physics would have us believe that the universe exists out there, indifferent to our presence, marching on with or without us. But quantum mechanics invites us into a world where the universe is inextricably linked to the observer. It asks whether our perception plays a role in shaping the world we experience. The implications of this are profound. If we are, in some way, responsible for collapsing the wave function, for determining which potential reality comes to pass, then what does that say about our power as observers? Are we mere witnesses to a grand, preordained cosmic drama, or are we active participants in the unfolding of the universe? This question leads us into the realm of consciousness, the very essence of what it means to be an observer. This is where science begins to blur with speculation. The observer effect raises the possibility that consciousness is not merely a passive recipient of sensory input, but an active participant in the creation of reality. Could our minds, our awareness, play a more significant role in shaping the universe than we've ever imagined? Could the very act of observation be the key to understanding not only quantum mechanics, but the nature of existence itself? As we continue to probe deeper into the quantum world, we encounter paradoxes that challenge not only our understanding of physics, but our very conception of reality. The idea that our perception can alter the fundamental nature of the universe is both exhilarating and unsettling. It suggests that reality is not a fixed, immutable thing, but a living, breathing construct, shaped by the interplay between the observer and the observed. In the next chapter, we will delve further into the implications of the observer-dependent universe, exploring how the nature of consciousness itself might hold the key to unlocking these mysteries. But for now, we stand at the edge of an awe-inspiring realization that the universe, in all its vastness and complexity, may not exist as we think it does. Instead, it may be a reflection of our own consciousness, a reality that unfolds not out there in the world, but within our very awareness. The collapse of the wave function. Is the universe waiting for us? Picture a world where everything is in flux, where nothing is fixed, nothing is certain. Instead, possibilities swirl around each moment, each object, each event, in a vast web of potential outcomes. Now imagine that it is only when you, the observer, focus your attention on something that it chooses a reality. In the quantum world, the very essence of existence seems to depend on your awareness. The collapse of the wave function is the key to this strange and unsettling reality. where the universe itself waits for you to look before it solidifies into form. This theory lies at the heart of one of the most perplexing and debated aspects of quantum mechanics. The wave function, a mathematical construct used to describe quantum systems, is a superposition of all possible states of a system. For example, an electron in an atom doesn't have a definite position or momentum until it is observed. Instead, it exists in a cloud of probabilities in multiple places at once. The moment you observe the system, the wave function collapses and the particle adopts a specific state. But until that moment, it remains a blur of infinite possibilities. In essence, the universe is caught in a dance of uncertainty, held in suspension until the observer intervenes. Take Schrödinger's cat as an example. The cat inside the box, a thought experiment designed by physicist Erwin Schrödinger, exists in a state of quantum superposition, alive and dead at the same time. This paradox is tied to the fate of a radioactive atom that may or may not decay. If the atom decays, the cat dies. If it doesn't, the cat remains alive. But according to quantum mechanics, the cat remains both alive and dead simultaneously until we open the box and observe its state. The act of observation forces the universe to choose one outcome. Before this, the universe is suspended in uncertainty, a possibility cloud of multiple realities, waiting for us to decide which one will collapse into existence. The concept of the wave function collapse introduces a profound question. Does the universe truly exist independently of us, as we traditionally believe, or is it in a state of potentiality, needing our observation to come into being? For centuries, the prevailing view in both science and philosophy was that reality exists whether we perceive it or not. The universe is an objective thing, governed by laws that hold true regardless of human observation. The planets orbit the sun, the tides rise and fall, and atoms vibrate in the same way, regardless of whether anyone is watching. This deterministic view, based on classical physics, tells us that the cosmos is a machine that runs on its own, indifferent to our awareness. But quantum mechanics challenges this assumption at every turn. The wave function collapse suggests that particles, and by extension, the universe itself, are not fixed entities. They are probabilities, multiple potential realities existing at once. It is our observation, our conscious act of measurement, that brings one possibility into focus and forces the universe to choose a single, observable reality. In this light, the universe seems to depend on us, the observers, to manifest its true form. The act of looking becomes not just an act of perception, but one of creation. Without us, the universe remains a fluid, ever-changing realm of probabilities. This idea is deeply unsettling. If the universe truly needs us to observe it, what does that say about its existence? Does this mean that the world outside us is a mere projection of our minds, a creation of our consciousness? And if reality depends on our perception, how can we trust that the world we experience is real at all? These are not just theoretical questions, but deeply existential ones. The very nature of our reality is called into question. But before we jump to conclusions, let's take a step back. There are alternative interpretations of quantum mechanics that don't require us to take such a subjective view of the universe. The most famous is the Copenhagen interpretation, which suggests that the wave function collapses upon observation, but doesn't imply that the universe is dependent on our consciousness. Instead, it posits that observation causes the wave function to collapse into a definite state, but the universe exists independently of whether we are aware of it or not. The idea of observation in this context isn't limited to human consciousness, but includes any interaction that measures the system. In this view, reality does not rely on us per se, but is instead an intricate dance of particles and energy governed by fundamental physical laws. Yet even within the Copenhagen interpretation, the role of the observer remains a central and enigmatic feature. If a photon or electron behaves differently when measured, it suggests that something about the act of observation itself has an effect on the system. The very fact that the wave function collapses when we observe a particle implies that our consciousness, or at the very least our interaction with the system, plays a significant role in shaping the outcome. Whether we call it measurement or observation, the result is the same. The universe responds in a way that depends on the observer's presence. The question then becomes not whether the universe is waiting for us, but why it seems to be waiting. Why does the wave function collapse only when we observe it? Is there something intrinsic in the nature of reality that requires our awareness to bring it into being? And if this is the case, does this mean that consciousness itself is the fundamental element of the universe? Are we not just passive observers, but active participants in the creation of reality? The implications of this are staggering. If consciousness has the power to collapse the wave function to shape the very fabric of reality, then perhaps consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain at all. Perhaps it is the key to understanding the universe, a force that transcends the physical body and connects us to the deeper mysteries of existence. If the universe waits for us to observe it, then perhaps we are not separate from it at all. Perhaps the universe itself is a manifestation of consciousness, an expression of awareness. As we explore these ideas, we must confront the age-old question of the nature of reality. Does the world exist independently of us, or is it a creation of our minds? For centuries, we have clung to the belief that reality is objective and external. But quantum mechanics invites us to consider the possibility that the universe is not a fixed entity, but a malleable, ever-shifting field of potential, shaped by the consciousness of the observer. If the act of observation is what brings the universe into being, then perhaps the universe is not as distant. The role of consciousness. What is the observer? What does it mean to be an observer? In the world of quantum mechanics, the observer is not merely a passive participant in the unfolding of reality. It is an active force, a catalyst that determines which of the infinite possibilities will collapse into the observable world. But this raises a profound question. What does it take to be an observer? Is it simply the act of measurement, a mere interaction with a quantum system? Or does it require something more, something uniquely conscious, something human? This question sits at the heart of one of the greatest mysteries in both physics and philosophy. Quantum mechanics teaches us that the act of observation plays a central role in shaping reality. In some interpretations, like the Copenhagen interpretation, the observer's role is primarily tied to the act of measurement. But what if observation itself is more than just a mechanical process? What if consciousness, the very thing that allows us to experience the world, is the key to understanding the observer effect? To explore this question, we must first delve into the basic idea of observation in quantum mechanics. When a particle, such as an electron, is observed, its wave function collapses and it takes on a definite state. Before observation, the particle exists in a superposition of all possible states, a probability wave that encompasses every possibility. But once we observe it, the wave function collapses and the particle chooses a specific state. This phenomenon seems to suggest that the universe is not a fixed reality, but one that exists in a potential state until we engage with it. But what exactly constitutes an engagement? Does it require the presence of a conscious mind, or can a machine or even a non-conscious event serve as an observer? In the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the most widely accepted view in quantum mechanics, the observer's role is primarily defined by measurement. It's not necessarily a conscious mind that causes the wave function to collapse, but any interaction that causes the quantum system to be measured. In this view, the act of observation need not be tied to human consciousness. The observer can be a device, a sensor, or even the environment itself. The key idea is that the quantum system interacts with its environment, and this interaction forces the system to assume a definite state. This view is practical, but it raises more questions
than it answers.
If measurement can collapse the wave function, does this mean that consciousness is not required for observation to occur? Can we truly separate consciousness from observation? Or is there something more profound happening when we, as conscious beings, interact with the quantum world? Some physicists, including Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, argued that the observer plays an essential role, but they left open the question of whether the observer must be conscious. After all, if the collapse of the wave function occurs only when a quantum system interacts with a measuring device, does that imply that consciousness is irrelevant? But as quantum mechanics has evolved, a growing number of theories have suggested that consciousness may indeed play a fundamental role in the collapse of the wave function. One such theory is known as the consciousness causes collapse hypothesis. According to this perspective, it is not just any interaction with a system that collapses the wave function, but the presence of a conscious observer. In this view, consciousness is the active force that determines which reality is brought into being. Without the conscious mind to choose a state, the universe remains in a superposition of possibilities. It is only when consciousness intervenes that the wave function collapses and a specific reality emerges. This theory introduces a new dimension to the role of consciousness in the universe. Rather than being a byproduct of the brain's activity, consciousness becomes the cornerstone of reality itself. Some proponents of this idea argue that consciousness is not merely an emergent phenomenon of complex brain activity, but a fundamental aspect of the cosmos, something that is woven into the very fabric of the universe. If this is true, it would mean that consciousness is not limited to human beings, but rather is a universal force that permeates all of existence. It is our consciousness, in this view, that shapes the world around us, turning the potential into the actual. This brings us to one of the most speculative and fascinating ideas in the philosophy of physics: the notion that the universe is somehow aware of itself. If consciousness is not just an incidental feature of human beings, but a fundamental part of the universe, could it be that the universe itself is aware of its own existence? Could the universe, through us, be observing itself? This idea, while deeply speculative, is rooted in a long tradition of philosophical thought. From the ancient Greeks to modern-day mystics, the notion that consciousness is not just an emergent property of complex systems, but a fundamental feature of reality itself, has been a subject of great interest. Some have drawn parallels between this idea and the concept of panpsychism, with the philosophical view that consciousness is not confined to humans or animals, but is a property of all matter. In this view, even particles, atoms, and fields possess some form of consciousness. If this is the case, then perhaps consciousness is the very medium through which the universe perceives itself. Instead of seeing consciousness as a separate, isolated entity, panpsychism suggests that it is an integral aspect of the universe, an inseparable part of the cosmos that allows reality to emerge from the quantum void. But the question remains, is this necessary? Can the universe exist without consciousness, or is it truly dependent on the act of observation to bring it into being? If the universe is truly waiting for us to observe it, does that imply that consciousness is not just a passive receiver of information, but an active force, without which reality would remain a tangled web of probabilities? The idea that the universe is somehow incomplete without our awareness is a radical departure from traditional views of reality. This debate sits at the crossroads of science and philosophy. Classical physics, with its deterministic view of the world, insists that reality exists whether or not anyone is there to witness it. The external world, as we understand it, is an objective reality governed by laws that operate independently of human perception. The planets orbit the sun, the trees sway in the wind, and the oceans rise and fall regardless of whether or not anyone is looking. In this view, the universe is a self-contained system, running on its own clock, indifferent to the presence or absence of observers. But quantum mechanics, with its strange and mysterious laws, challenges this notion. In the quantum realm, particles are not fixed objects but exist in a superposition of all possible states until observed. A photon, for instance, can be both a wave and a particle at the same time, existing in multiple locations and states until it is measured. It is the act of observation that forces the particle to choose a specific state. But if no one is there to observe it, how does the wave function collapse? Does it collapse at all? Does the particle simply remain a potential forever, in a state of possibility with no actual reality until an observer interacts with it? This paradox between the subjective, observer-dependent nature of quantum reality and the objective, external world of classical physics has led to a series of different interpretations. One of the most famous of these is the many worlds interpretation, which proposes a radically different view of the universe's evolution. According to the many worlds hypothesis, every time an observation is made, every time the wave function collapses, reality splits into multiple parallel worlds, each representing a different possible outcome. In other words, when we observe a particle, the universe branches, creating a new reality for every possible outcome. The cat in Schrödinger's box doesn't just exist as both alive and dead, but actually branches into two separate worlds. One where the cat is alive and one where it is dead. This interpretation offers a striking solution to the observer effect. Instead of the universe needing an observer to collapse the wave function, the universe constantly splits into multiple versions of itself. In this view, reality is never singular. Instead, it is an infinite, branching set of parallel worlds, each representing a different outcome. The observer doesn't create reality by looking, but rather each possible reality exists simultaneously in its own universe. The observer simply finds themselves in one of those worlds, experiencing one possible outcome of an infinite number. While the many worlds interpretation has its own share of supporters, it also raises more questions than it answers. For one, if every observation leads to the creation of an entirely new universe, how do we reconcile this with our everyday experience of a stable, singular reality? How do we reconcile the existence of these multiple universes, each one equally real but inaccessible to the others? And if reality branches out with every possible outcome, does that mean there is an infinite number of versions of ourselves, each living out a different life in a different world? These are questions that the many worlds interpretation does not fully answer, but it does force us to confront a central idea. The observer is not a passive entity, but a key player in the unfolding of reality. In this interpretation, our observation doesn't cause reality to exist, but rather it determines which version of reality we experience. The universe itself continues to exist whether we observe it or not, but it is the act of observation that defines which branch of the multiverse we occupy. This brings us back to the core philosophical debate. Does the universe need us to observe it in order to exist? In the many worlds interpretation, the answer seems to be no. The universe doesn't require our observation to exist, but our perception determines which branch of reality we occupy. But this only raises more questions about the nature of reality itself. If the universe is constantly branching into multiple worlds, does that mean every possible outcome already exists, independent of our observation? And if it does, what does that say about the nature of time, space, and the very concept of existence? The alternative view that reality exists independently of us is the position held by classical physics. According to this perspective, the universe persists in its own objective reality, governed by laws that are not contingent on human perception. The external world is not incomplete in the absence of observers. It is simply there, waiting for us to interact with it. In this view, the role of the observer is not to create reality, but to simply perceive it. Our consciousness is a passive receiver, translating the objective world into a subjective experience. But even within classical physics, this idea of a fixed, independent reality has begun to face scrutiny. The observer effect, which underpins much of quantum theory, suggests that observation can influence the outcome of events at the quantum level. The mere presence of an observer or the potential for observation seems to have an impact on the state of a system. Does this mean that even in a world governed by classical laws, reality is somehow incomplete without our observation? And if quantum mechanics shows us that observation shapes reality at the microscopic level, does this imply that our perception may play a more significant role in shaping the macroscopic world than we realize? As we continue to explore the paradoxes of quantum mechanics, we are led to a deeper question about the nature of the external world. Is it truly independent of our observation, or is it inextricably linked to our awareness? The concept of dualities, of reality both existing and not existing, of wave and particle, of observation and non-observation, suggests that the truth may not be as simple as we once thought. The universe may exist in multiple states, each waiting to be realized, and it is the observer, whether human or otherwise, who plays the pivotal role in shaping which reality comes into being. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the philosophical implications of these paradoxes, exploring how they challenge our understanding of time, space, and existence itself. We will look at how the observer-dependent nature of quantum mechanics might offer a new lens through which to view consciousness, reality, and the very structure of the cosmos. But for now, the paradox remains. Does the universe need us to observe it, or does it persist independently, unfolding with or without our awareness? The answer may lie not in the universe itself, but in the very nature of our consciousness. Quantum mysticism. Does consciousness shape the universe? In the shadowy realm where science and mysticism meet, the boundaries of reality begin to blur. For centuries, the great mysteries of existence, why we are here, what consciousness truly is, and how the universe came to be, have been the domain of philosophers, spiritual seekers, and mystics. But now in the 21st century, these ancient questions are being revisited by some of the most brilliant minds in physics. The question is no longer simply metaphysical, it is in a sense scientific. Is consciousness an essential element of the universe? Does it shape the very fabric of reality, or is the connection between consciousness and the cosmos merely a projection of human significance? One of the most captivating and speculative theories in modern physics is the idea that consciousness itself might play a key role in the collapse of the quantum wave function. Penrose's Auch-Oar hypothesis isn't the only theory to suggest a connection between consciousness and quantum mechanics. Many proponents of quantum mysticism argue that consciousness is not just a byproduct of the brain's processes, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos, something that exists not only within us, but throughout the entire universe. This idea echoes ancient philosophies and spiritual traditions, which have long suggested that consciousness is a universal force that pervades all of existence. From the mystics of the East to the philosophers of the West, there has always been the notion that the cosmos is alive with awareness, that consciousness is not confined to individual beings, but is woven into the very fabric of reality itself. In this view, the universe is not a cold, indifferent machine, as portrayed by classical physics, but a living conscious entity, a vast, interconnected web of awareness. Consciousness, in this sense, is not just something that arises from complex neural networks, but is a fundamental property of the universe, shaping and directing the flow of time, space, and matter. This idea finds some resonance in the work of physicist David Bohm, who proposed that the universe is an undivided whole, a hollow movement in which everything is interconnected and interdependent. For Bohm, the mind is not separate from the universe, but is part of a deeper, underlying reality that transcends the material world. But does this mean that the universe is waiting for us to observe it, or that consciousness somehow creates reality? Here lies the tension between science and mysticism. While quantum mechanics reveals that observation can influence the behavior of quantum systems, it does not necessarily mean that consciousness is the ultimate force behind the collapse of the wave function. The Copenhagen interpretation, for example, suggests that the wave function collapses when a measurement is made, but this measurement need not be the result of conscious awareness. The observer could be a machine, a detector, or even an environment, interacting with the system. In this view, consciousness is not required to create reality. Rather, the act of measurement, any interaction with the system, is sufficient to bring a quantum system into a definite state. But even within this scientific framework, the question remains, why does observation matter in the first place? If reality exists independently of us, why does it seem to depend on the observer to collapse into a specific form? The fact that quantum systems behave differently when observed suggests that something fundamental about the universe is shaped by our awareness, whether we are conscious of it or not. This is where quantum mysticism begins to blur the lines between scientific inquiry and philosophical wonder. The idea that consciousness might influence quantum states opens up a whole new realm of possibility. It raises the tantalizing question: is the universe inherently tied to conscious experience, or is this simply a romantic projection of our own need to feel significant? Are we, as conscious beings, essential to the unfolding of reality, or is our place in the cosmos merely a fleeting illusion, a byproduct of a vast impersonal universe? Some critics argue that quantum mysticism is a form of overinterpretation, a way of injecting human significance into a world that is, in fact, indifferent to our existence. The universe, they argue, does not need us to observe it. It exists on its own terms, governed by impersonal laws that operate regardless of our perception. From this perspective, the quantum realm is not a stage for human drama, but a realm of mathematical probabilities indifferent to our awareness. It is tempting to read human meaning into the quantum world, to project our own consciousness onto the cosmos, but this, critics argue, is a misunderstanding of the science. Yet even as science continues to explore the fundamental nature of the universe, there remains something profoundly mystical about the questions we are asking. We are trying to understand a universe that is, at its deepest level, unknowable, a place where observation and reality are intimately connected, where the act of looking at something might change its very nature. The fact that we even ask these questions, that we attempt to peer into the depths of existence, suggests that our consciousness is not a passive observer, but a force that shapes the world around us, whether we fully understand it or not. In the end, the question of whether consciousness shapes the universe is a question without a definitive answer. It is a mystery that lies at the intersection of science and philosophy, of the known and the unknown. As we continue to probe the mysteries of quantum mechanics and consciousness, we must confront the possibility that the universe is not just a machine to be studied, but a living, breathing mystery to be experienced, a mystery in which we, as conscious beings, may play a more profound role than we could ever imagine. In the next section, we will explore the broader implications of these ideas, examining how the quantum view of reality challenges our understanding of time, space, and existence itself. We will delve into the nature of non-locality and how it suggests that consciousness may transcend space and time. But for now, the question remains: is the universe inherently tied to conscious experience, or is that simply a projection of our own need for meaning? The answer lies somewhere between science and mysticism, where the boundaries of reality are still being explored. Beyond the physical, does awareness create the world? What if reality isn't something external waiting to be discovered? What If it's a construct of our very minds, a mental projection that exists because we are aware of it, in the quest to understand the nature of existence, we often assume that the physical world is the foundation of reality, a world of atoms, particles, and forces that exists independently of our perception. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if the very fabric of reality is not an external thing at all, but a product of our consciousness? Could awareness itself be the origin of all that we perceive, the lens through which the universe comes into being? This is the bold and fascinating idea at the heart of idealism, a philosophical perspective that posits that reality is fundamentally mental. According to idealism, consciousness is not just a byproduct of physical processes or an emergent property of complex brains, it is the ground of all existence. In this view, the physical world is not an objective reality that exists outside of us, independent of our awareness. Rather, it is a mental construct shaped and defined by the very act of consciousness. The universe itself, in this sense, is a manifestation of awareness, an expression of the mind. In the words of the philosopher George Berkeley, esse est percipi, to be, is to be perceived. In this world, nothing exists without a conscious observer to experience it. Idealism stands in stark contrast to physicalism, the view that everything that exists is ultimately physical and that consciousness is merely a byproduct of complex arrangements of matter. Physicalism holds that the universe exists independently of our perception and that the mind is a product of the brain, which in turn is made up of physical matter. In this view, consciousness is a passive receiver, a mirror reflecting the objective world around us. The external world, the stars, the trees, the oceans, is a reality that exists whether or not anyone is there to observe it. It is impersonal, indifferent to our awareness, and governed by immutable physical laws, but quantum mechanics, with its strange and mysterious laws, suggests that the universe may not be so impersonal after all. The very nature of quantum reality, where particles exist in multiple states at once and only collapse into a definite form upon observation, challenges the physicalist assumption that reality exists independently of the observer. If observation plays a role in determining the state of a quantum system, then does it follow that reality itself is somehow dependent on consciousness? Could it be that our awareness, the very act of perceiving, plays an essential role in shaping the world we experience? This question has profound implications. If reality is a mental construct, as idealism suggests, then what does it mean for us to be conscious of the world around us? Does this imply that the physical world is not out there waiting to be discovered, but is instead a creation of our minds? And if consciousness gives rise to the world, does this mean that the universe exists only as long as we are aware of it? Does reality depend on our consciousness to bring it into being, or is it an independent entity that exists whether we observe it or not? One of the most striking features of idealism is the way it challenges our deeply ingrained beliefs about the external world. For most of us, the physical world is a given. It's something that exists independently of our perception, a solid, objective reality that we can measure, quantify, and interact with. But if consciousness creates the world, then this assumption falls apart. The very ground of existence, what we think of as the external world, is not external at all. It is a projection of our own minds, an internal creation that takes shape through our awareness. This view echoes ancient philosophies, particularly those found in Eastern traditions like Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism, which suggest that the ultimate nature of reality is consciousness itself. In these philosophies, the physical world is seen as an illusion, a veil of appearances that obscures the true nature of existence. The world we perceive is not out there, but a projection of our minds arising from the fundamental consciousness that underlies all things. In this view, the mind is not separate from the universe, but is part of the very fabric of reality itself. The universe, in essence, is an extension of consciousness, an expression of awareness made manifest. In the West, philosophers like Immanuel Kant have also suggested that our perception of reality is shaped by our mind. Kant proposed that we can never know things as they are in themselves, noumena. Instead, we are only able to know the world as it appears to us, phenomena. According to Kant, our minds structure and shape our experiences of reality, imposing categories like space, time, and causality onto the raw data of sensory input. In this way, our perception is not a passive reflection of an objective world, but an active process of creating reality. Though Kant didn't go as far as to say that consciousness creates the world, he did suggest that our experience of it is inseparable from the mind that perceives it. The implications of idealism are vast. If awareness creates the world, then consciousness is not just a passive observer of reality, but its creator. In this view, reality is not a thing that exists out there, independent of us, but a process that arises from consciousness. Our minds are not separate from the world. They are the very medium through which the world is brought into being. Reality, then, is not fixed or objective, but fluid and malleable, shaped by our awareness and perception. This perspective also invites us to reconsider the role of the observer in quantum mechanics. If consciousness is the ground of all being, then the act of observation becomes far more significant than we might have thought. It is not just the collapse of a wave function that brings quantum particles into a definite state, it is the act of conscious awareness itself. The universe, in this sense, is not a passive stage on which events unfold, but a dynamic process that arises from consciousness. The observer is not merely watching the show, they are the ones creating it. But how does this fit with the physicalist view of the universe? Can we reconcile the idea that consciousness creates reality with the understanding that physical laws govern the universe? One possibility is that consciousness and the physical world are not two separate entities, but are inextricably linked. Rather than seeing consciousness as a product of the brain, we might view the brain as the instrument through which consciousness interacts with the world. In this view, consciousness shapes the physical world, but the physical world is also the medium through which consciousness expresses itself. The two are not separate, but are part of a larger, unified reality. Of course, this idea raises more questions than it answers. If reality is created by consciousness, what happens in the absence of consciousness? Does the world cease to exist when there is no one to perceive it? Or does it continue in some other form? And if consciousness is the creator of reality, does that mean that each of us is the creator of our own universe? Are we all, in some sense, living in separate worlds, each shaped by our individual perceptions? These questions challenge our deepest assumptions about reality. If consciousness is the ground of all existence, then the universe is not a fixed, external world, but a living, ever-changing expression of awareness. In this sense, the world is not out there, waiting to be discovered. It is in here, arising from the depths of our consciousness. As we continue to explore the nature of reality, we must confront the possibility that the world we experience is not the ultimate truth, but a reflection of our own awareness. Reality, in this view, is not something that exists independently of us. It is something that arises from the very act of perception. The universe, it seems, is not waiting for us to discover it. It is waiting for us to create it. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the nature of time and space, exploring how the quantum view of reality challenges our traditional understanding of these concepts. We will examine how the collapse of the wave function might reveal hidden dimensions of existence, and how the nature of time itself may be far more mysterious than we ever imagined. For now, we are left with the question, does awareness create the world? And if so, what does this mean for our understanding of reality? The hard problem of consciousness. What is awareness? Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a forest. The sunlight filters through the leaves, birds chirp in the distance, and a gentle breeze brushes your face. You're aware of the environment around you, the smells of the earth, the rustling of the trees, and your own thoughts and emotions as they intertwine with this experience. You might ask yourself, how does this happen? How is it that, as you move through the world, you have a conscious experience of it? You see, hear, and feel the world, but how does the mere presence of neural activity in your brain create the rich, vivid world that you experience as consciousness? This is the hard problem of consciousness proposed by philosopher David Chalmers, the mystery of how subjective experience, what it feels like to be you, emerges from the objective processes of the brain. This problem is one of the most profound and perplexing questions in both philosophy and neuroscience. The mind, which is the seat of all thoughts, sensations, and awareness, appears to arise from the brain, a physical organ composed of cells, neurons, and electrical signals. But how do these physical processes give rise to something so deeply subjective as experience? In other words, how do neurons firing in the brain produce the sensation of being aware? And more importantly, why do we experience the world at all? Why is there something it feels like to be conscious, to have an inner life, rather than simply existing as a collection of cells and chemicals? This distinction between the objective, measurable processes of the brain and the subjective, personal experience of being is what Chalmers refers to as the hard problem. The easy problems of consciousness, such as understanding how the brain processes information or how we recognize faces, are within the realm of scientific inquiry. These are challenges that, while complex, can be approached with existing methods in neuroscience and psychology. However, the hard problem cuts deeper. How do these brain processes lead to the inner experience of being? How does physical reality give rise to the world of feelings, thoughts, and awareness? It is here that the problem takes on an almost mystical quality. While we can measure brain activity and study how the mind interacts with the physical world, we have no concrete way of explaining why that activity results in conscious experience. We can understand the brain's functions, its synaptic connections, its electrical impulses, and its patterns of activity, but we still do not understand how all of this translates into the very experience of consciousness itself, what it's like part of being alive. The question then becomes, is consciousness just a byproduct of complex neural processes, or is it something more fundamental? Some scientists and philosophers argue that consciousness is simply an emergent property of the brain. According to this view, once the brain reaches a certain level of... This brings us to the alternative view that consciousness might be a fundamental aspect of reality, something that exists independently of the brain, and perhaps even the material world. This perspective is closely associated with panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is not something that emerges from physical processes, but is a fundamental feature of the universe, present in all things. According to panpsychism, consciousness is not confined to humans or animals, but is a property of all matter. Everything from rocks to rivers to atoms possesses some form of consciousness, however rudimentary. In this view, consciousness is not an emergent phenomenon, but a basic building block of existence, woven into the very fabric of reality. While this theory is far from mainstream in scientific circles, it raises a profound question. Could the subjective experience of being, the feeling of awareness, be as fundamental as space, time, and matter? Could consciousness be a quality inherent in the universe itself, much like gravity or electromagnetism? In this context, the hard problem of consciousness takes on new dimensions. Rather than trying to explain how consciousness emerges from the brain, we might ask whether consciousness is the very ground of all existence. the lens through which reality itself is perceived. From this perspective, the mystery of how physical processes give rise to experience might be reframed. The problem is not how consciousness emerges from the brain, but why we experience it as separate from the rest of reality. There are also theories that suggest consciousness is linked to the quantum realm. Some theorists, like Roger Penrose, suggest that consciousness might arise from quantum processes within the brain. According to Penrose's orchestrated objective reduction (OR) theory, consciousness emerges from quantum computations in the brain's microtubules, tiny structures within neurons. These microtubules might facilitate quantum states, which are inherently non-local and can exist in superposition, much like the strange particles of quantum mechanics. In this view, consciousness is not a byproduct of classical physics or neural activity, but a quantum phenomenon. But even with these theories, the question remains: why does consciousness exist at all? Why is there something it feels like to be conscious? This question takes us beyond the realm of neuroscience and into the metaphysical. If we accept that consciousness cannot simply be reduced to neural activity, we are left with the possibility that consciousness itself is not just a biological function, but an aspect of reality that is, in some sense, independent of the physical world. This brings us back to the age-old question: what is awareness? Is it something that arises from the interaction of neurons and synapses, a complex dance of molecules in our brain? Or is it something more mysterious, something that transcends the physical world and connects us to the deeper truths of the universe? The hard problem of consciousness, as Chalmers points out, is not merely a scientific puzzle to be solved. It is a philosophical mystery that challenges our understanding of reality itself. How does the world, which appears to be an objective, physical entity, give rise to the deeply subjective experience of awareness? And more importantly, how does the experience of awareness shape the world around us? The debate continues: is consciousness a byproduct of the brain, or is it something more? Is it a fundamental property of the universe, as ancient philosophers and modern quantum theorists suggest? And if so, how do we reconcile our subjective experiences with the objective world? We see these are questions that science, philosophy, and spirituality continue to grapple with, questions that may ultimately shape our understanding of who we are and where we fit in the vast, mysterious universe. As we explore the nature of consciousness further, we will dive into how these ideas challenge our understanding of time, space, and the very nature of reality itself. But for now, the hard problem remains unsolved, and with it, the profound mystery of awareness. What is consciousness, and why does it exist? This remains one of the deepest questions we can ask about the nature of reality. Solipsism and the nature of reality. What if the world you perceive, the people you interact with, the very universe that surrounds you, is nothing more than a projection of your own mind? What if the reality you experience, with all its complexities and details, is not an independent external world, but a creation of your own consciousness? This is the radical and unsettling idea at the heart of solipsism, the philosophical theory that only one's mind is sure to exist, and that all external phenomena, including other minds, may be mere illusions. The solipsist, in essence, believes that reality is entirely subjective and internal experience whose existence is dependent solely on the observer. While solipsism has often been dismissed as a mere intellectual curiosity, it presents a provocative challenge to our most deeply held assumptions about the nature of reality. It raises the fundamental question: can we truly know whether anything exists outside of our own mind? Are we trapped in a solipsistic reality where the external world is nothing more than an illusion crafted by our perceptions and awareness? Or, conversely, is the world truly independent of us, an objective reality that exists regardless of whether we observe it? To explore this question, we must first delve into the core of solipsism. According to solipsism, all that we can be certain is our own mind and the experiences we have within it. This means that everything we perceive, our surroundings, our bodies, the people we interact with, is potentially a creation of our consciousness. The physical world as we know it could be nothing more than a dream, an illusion generated by our minds. In its extreme form, solipsism suggests that other minds do not exist at all, and that the entire universe is simply a projection of our own thoughts and experiences. This idea is, of course, deeply unsettling. The notion that the world we see around us, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the people we love and cherish could be figments of our imagination, is profoundly alienating. Yet, despite its seemingly paradoxical and self-centered nature, solipsism forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. How can we know for certain that the world exists independent of us? After all we can directly experience are the contents of our own minds. The external world is only known to us through our perceptions, which are inherently subjective. Even the most rigorous scientific observations are mediated by our senses and interpreted by our minds. The very act of perceiving the world, in a sense, constructs the world itself. So, how do we know it's real? This solipsistic view stands in stark contrast to the commonly accepted notion of an independent reality, a universe that exists out there, independently of our minds. In this view, reality is a fixed and objective thing, governed by physical laws and existing whether or not anyone is there to observe it. From the perspective of classical physics, the universe is a vast, impersonal system, unfolding according to predictable laws. The Earth orbits the Sun, the tides ebb and flow, and stars are born and die. All of these things happen whether or not anyone is there to witness them. In this sense, the external world is real and objective, existing independently of our perception. The tension between solipsism and the belief in an independent reality is more than just a philosophical debate. It connects to some of the deepest questions in quantum mechanics, particularly the observer problem. As we have seen in previous sections, quantum mechanics reveals a world that is deeply entangled with the observer. In the quantum realm, particles exist in a state of superposition, existing in multiple states at once, until they are observed. The act of observation collapses the wave function, forcing the particle into a single, definite state. This has led some theorists to suggest that the observer's awareness plays a fundamental role in shaping reality, perhaps even creating it in the process. If the act of observation collapses the wave function, could this imply that the universe exists in a potential state, waiting for us to observe it? And if observation is so integral to the fabric of reality, does this suggest that the external world is, in some sense, dependent on our awareness? But here, the tension between solipsism and an independent reality becomes even more pronounced. If we take the solipsistic view to its logical extreme, we might conclude that the entire universe is a projection of our own minds, that everything we perceive, including other people, is merely a figment of our imagination. This would mean that the universe is not just dependent on our observation to exist, but is entirely constructed from our awareness. The world itself, in this view, becomes a reflection of our thoughts, a product of our consciousness. Yet, this idea brings with it profound challenges. For one, it seems to contradict our everyday experience. The external world feels so real, so solid, so independent of us. We see objects in space, feel the pull of gravity, and experience time moving forward. These are not illusions, they are consistent and predictable phenomena that do not appear to be subject to the whims of our perception. Even if we entertain the possibility that the world is constructed by our awareness, it is difficult to reconcile this with the fact that the universe behaves in such a regular, predictable way. The laws of physics do not change from one person's perception to another's. The universe, it seems, operates as though it exists independently of any one individual mind. This brings us to a crucial question. How can we balance the solipsistic view with the reality of a shared, independent world? Can both perspectives coexist? One possible resolution lies in the idea of a collective consciousness, a shared mind or awareness that transcends the individual and binds all of us together. From this perspective, the universe is not just the creation of a single mind, but the manifestation of a collective awareness shared by all conscious beings. Reality is not a solitary illusion, but a joint creation, woven together by the perceptions and experiences of all who inhabit it. In quantum mechanics, this idea of a collective consciousness might be reflected in the phenomenon of non-locality, where particles that are entangled remain connected even over vast distances. It's as though the particles are in communication with each other, regardless of the space between them. Could this be a metaphor for a collective awareness in which all minds are interconnected and the universe is shaped not just by individual observation, but by the awareness of all sentient beings? This would allow for the possibility of a shared, independent reality while still acknowledging the role of consciousness in shaping that reality. However, even with this idea of collective consciousness, the solipsistic challenge remains. Can we truly be certain that the world exists outside of our own mind? Is there any way to prove that the universe is not just a mental projection, a construct of our perceptions? The solipsist might argue that we can never know for sure, that the reality we experience is, by definition, something that exists only within our minds. And yet, despite the challenges posed by solipsism, the shared, independent reality we experience every day seems to persist, providing us with a strong intuitive sense that the world exists outside of our perception. In the end, the question of whether reality is solipsistic or independent remains unresolved. Quantum mechanics suggests that consciousness is intertwined with the very fabric of the universe, while solipsism challenges us to question whether the world is truly out there at all. As we explore these ideas further, we will encounter more paradoxes and mysteries, questions that continue to provoke both scientific inquiry and philosophical wonder. The nature of reality, it seems, is as elusive and mysterious as consciousness itself. In the next section, we will explore how these philosophical ideas about reality relate to our understanding of time and space, and how quantum mechanics might offer new insights into the fundamental structure of the universe. But for now, we are left with the tension between solipsism and the belief in an independent, objective reality, two views that challenge our understanding of existence itself. Could reality be a construct? Imagine for a moment that the world around you, the air you breathe, the ground beneath your feet, the stars in the sky, wasn't as real as you believe. What if everything you see, hear, and feel is merely a sophisticated illusion, crafted and maintained by an intelligence far greater than your own? This idea, known as the simulation hypothesis, suggests that the reality we experience is not the true underlying reality, but a virtual construct, a simulation generated by a far more advanced civilization or entity. While this concept has long been the realm of science fiction, it has gained increasing attention in recent years, with leading scientists and philosophers beginning to seriously consider the possibility that our universe is, in fact, an artificial creation. The simulation hypothesis was popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, who proposed that one of three possibilities must be true. 1, human civilization will never reach a level of technological advancement capable of creating simulations of entire universes. 2, if such a civilization does emerge, it would choose not to run such simulations. Or 3, we are almost certainly living in a simulation. According to Bostrom, if a sufficiently advanced civilization is capable of running simulations so detailed and complex that the simulated beings within them would be unaware of their artificial nature, then the probability that we are in one of those simulations becomes astronomically high. But what would it mean if reality were in fact a simulation? Would our experiences still hold meaning if we knew they were part of a constructed world? And how would the observer effect in quantum mechanics, the idea that observation collapses quantum possibilities into a definite reality, fit into the concept of a simulated universe? Could our awareness be the key that allows us to tune into this simulated world, shaping our experiences and interacting with the simulation in ways that we don't fully understand? At first glance, the simulation hypothesis might seem to be the stuff of science fiction reminiscent of films like The Matrix, where characters discover that their world is an elaborate simulation controlled by powerful machines. But the deeper you delve into modern physics and quantum mechanics, the more this idea seems to align with some of the most profound mysteries of existence. For instance, the nature of quantum entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances can still instantaneously influence one another, bears an eerie resemblance to the way a virtual simulation might behave, where information is transmitted across a network instantaneously, regardless of distance. In a simulation, the fabric of space and time itself could be controlled by algorithms or rules, much as the code of a computer program defines the behavior of the virtual world. This would explain some of the seemingly bizarre aspects of quantum physics, the apparent discreteness of matter, the wave-particle duality, and the fact that observation itself seems to affect the state of quantum systems. Could it be that our perception of the universe is shaped by the simulation's parameters, and that our awareness is the mechanism through which we interface with the simulated world? In quantum mechanics, particles exist in multiple states at once until they are observed, at which point they choose a definite state. This observation causes the collapse of the wave function, a mysterious process that turns probability into reality. Some have speculated that this phenomenon aligns with the idea of a simulation. Perhaps in a simulated universe, the act of looking is equivalent to the simulation's algorithm pulling the necessary information into focus, rendering a particular outcome. Just as a video game character might choose an action when the player interacts with the game, the universe, in this view, could be responding to our perception, as though we are active participants in a constructed reality. At its core, the simulation hypothesis suggests that reality is fundamentally artificial, created by some form of higher intelligence. In this sense, we might be nothing more than programmed beings existing inside a simulation that appears to be real, but is in fact entirely fabricated. But how would such a simulation be created? And if it were possible for an advanced civilization to create a simulation that is indistinguishable from reality, what would be the purpose of such an endeavor? One possible explanation is that the simulation could be created for the purpose of scientific or philosophical inquiry, in the same way that scientists run simulations to model complex systems such as climate change, economic systems, or even human behavior. A highly advanced civilization might create a simulation of an entire universe to observe the evolution of life, intelligence, and consciousness. Perhaps the simulation is a test, an experiment designed to answer questions about the nature of existence or the origins of consciousness itself. Another possibility is that we are living in a simulation designed for entertainment or recreational purposes, as depicted in science fiction narratives. Imagine that future beings far beyond us in intelligence and capability might run simulations simply to experience the world as we know it, to explore different possibilities, or to simulate the creation of life for their own amusement. In this scenario, the purpose of the simulation would be less about scientific inquiry and more about experiencing reality from a completely different perspective. While these ideas might sound speculative, there are scientific arguments that lend the simulation hypothesis a certain degree of plausibility. For instance, Ray Kurzweil, a futurist and inventor, has predicted that humanity will one day achieve the technological capabilities to create virtual realities so advanced that the simulated experiences will be indistinguishable from actual reality. Given this potential future, Kurzweil argues, it is possible that a sufficiently advanced civilization could create a simulation in which conscious beings like us would not be able to detect the artificial nature of their reality. Moreover, the laws of physics themselves seem to bear some resemblance to the logic of a computational universe. The discreteness of space and time, where particles can only exist in specific states and energies, suggests that the universe might be a digital construct with certain chunks of reality or information existing in fixed quantities. The fine-tuning of the constants of nature, the precision with which the universe seems to be calibrated for life, might even hint that we are in a simulation designed to permit complex life to emerge. After all, the existence of a simulated universe requires rules and constraints to make it consistent and stable, just as the laws of physics keep the universe in balance. However, despite the tantalizing possibilities, the simulation hypothesis also faces serious challenges. One of the most fundamental questions is, if we are in a simulation, who is running it? If the simulation hypothesis is true, it implies that there is a higher intelligence or civilization capable of creating an entire universe from scratch. This leads to the paradox of infinite regress. If we are in a simulation, are the beings who created our simulation themselves living in a simulation? And if they are, then who created their simulation, and so on, ad infinitum. Furthermore, even if we accept the idea of a simulation, how would it affect our understanding of existence? Would it diminish the meaning and significance of our lives if we knew that everything we experience is artificial? Would our relationships, our struggles, and our achievements be rendered meaningless in a world where nothing is real? Or, conversely, could it enhance our sense of wonder as we discover that we are living in a reality far more intricate and complex than we could have ever imagined? At its most profound, the simulation hypothesis forces us to reconsider the very nature of reality. If our universe is a simulation, then what does that say about the nature of consciousness itself? Could it be that consciousness, rather than being a byproduct of brain activity, is the interface through which we connect to the simulation, shaping our perceptions and experiences? If we truly are living in a simulated reality, does this suggest that our minds are more powerful than we think that we are, in some sense, co-creators of the reality we experience? As we continue to explore the boundaries of physics, consciousness, and reality, we must confront the possibility that everything we know about the universe, everything we think we understand, could be a construct. Whether it is a simulated experience, a mental projection, or a reality shaped by our perceptions, the question remains, is our world truly what it seems? The simulation hypothesis doesn't just challenge our understanding of the universe, it forces us to ask deeper questions about our place in it, our role as observers, and the true nature of existence itself. The limits of science imagine a universe devoid of observers, a cosmos without conscious beings, without any mind to perceive it. What would that reality look like? Would the laws of physics still hold? Would particles still exist, their behavior governed by quantum mechanics? Or would the very fabric of the universe unravel in the absence of consciousness to anchor it? These questions probe the very limits of our understanding of reality and highlight one of the greatest philosophical and scientific challenges of our time. What happens when we remove the observer from the equation? In the world of quantum mechanics, this question takes on a particularly compelling significance. As we have explored throughout this discussion, quantum theory reveals a reality where observation plays a fundamental role in shaping the state of a system. The famous observer effect suggests that particles, such as electrons, do not exist in definite states until they are measured or observed. Before that, they exist as a cloud of probabilities, occupying multiple potential states at once. The very act of observing a particle collapses this cloud of possibilities, forcing it into a specific state. This leads to the tantalizing possibility that the universe itself is dependent on the presence of an observer, one who acts as the key that unlocks the true nature of reality. But what if there were no observer? What if no one was around to watch the particles, to measure the wave functions, to collapse the possibilities? Does reality cease to exist in any meaningful sense, or does it continue to unfold in the absence of conscious observation? If we take the observer effect seriously, it suggests that without observation, there may be no definitive reality, no settled objective universe. Instead, reality might remain in a state of potentiality, a web of infinite possibilities with no way to determine which one will come to the forefront. But is this really the case? On the one hand, we have the subjective, observer-dependent view of reality as dictated by quantum mechanics, which suggests that reality only takes form when observed. This view leads us to ask whether the universe truly exists independently of our perception. If the very nature of existence is influenced by observation, does this imply that reality is not as objective as we once thought? Could the universe itself be something like a virtual experience, shaped by the minds that perceive it, where the laws of physics are simply a set of rules that only come into effect when consciousness interacts with the system? On the other hand, we have the objective view of reality, which has dominated science for centuries. From the classical physics standpoint, the universe operates independently of us. The laws of nature apply whether or not anyone is there to observe them. Galaxies continue to rotate, stars burn in their billions, and particles interact through the fundamental forces of nature, regardless of human consciousness. This view, largely inherited from Newtonian physics, posits that reality exists out there, independent of any observer. It suggests that the world functions as a well-oiled machine, governed by objective laws that would continue to operate, even if we were not there to witness them. But where do these two views, observer-dependent versus objective, meet? And how can science address the limits of this debate? One of the major challenges of quantum mechanics is that its bizarre predictions seem to stand in opposition to our everyday experiences. We know that when we look at something, when we measure it or observe it, it appears to exist in a definite state. But quantum mechanics seems to suggest that at the smallest scales, things don't settle into a definite state until an observation is made. Does this mean that reality only exists because we look at it? Or does it simply mean that our instruments and measurements are themselves an integral part of how we interact with the universe? This brings us to the question of scientific inquiry itself. How far can science take us in answering these questions? Quantum mechanics has revolutionized our understanding of the universe, but it has also left us with a host of mysteries that remain unsolved. The observer effect and the role of consciousness in shaping reality remain at the heart of the debate. Science can explain how particles behave under certain conditions, how wave functions collapse when measured, but it cannot answer the deeper question of why consciousness seems to play such a pivotal role. And this brings us to the limits of scientific inquiry. While science is a powerful tool for understanding the physical world, it is not equipped to address every aspect of existence. Science deals with what is measurable, observable, and repeatable. It can describe how things work. It can formulate theories and conduct experiments, but it cannot fully address questions of subjective experience, meaning, or the nature of consciousness itself. The question of why we experience the world and what role observation plays in shaping reality is one that transcends the boundaries of empirical science. In this sense, quantum mechanics, though a brilliant theory that describes the behavior of matter and energy at the smallest scales, cannot fully explain the essence of reality. This brings us back to the question, does reality continue to function? without an observer? In the world of quantum mechanics, the answer is not entirely clear. On one hand, it is difficult to conceive of reality existing without an observer because the very act of observation seems to collapse the quantum wave function, bringing potentialities into actual states. Without the act of observation, reality remains undefined, a cloud of possibilities with no concrete form. But on the other hand, if we apply the objective view, reality is still there, operating according to the laws of physics, even if there is no one to witness it. We are left with a paradox. Does the universe exist because we observe it, or do we observe it because it exists? This paradox points to the limits of what science can address. While science excels in explaining the how of the universe, how particles behave, how light travels, how energy is transferred, it struggles with the why. Why does the universe obey these laws? Why is there something rather than nothing? And why does the act of observation appear to play such a central role in shaping the state of reality? These are questions that extend beyond the scientific method and delve into the realm of philosophy, metaphysics, and perhaps even consciousness itself. The tension between the objective universe and the observer-dependent reality reflects a fundamental limitation in our understanding. Science can describe reality in great detail, but it cannot fully capture the subjective experience that we have of it. The observer problem in quantum mechanics, the question of how consciousness interacts with physical reality, remains an open question, one that challenges our very understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. In contemplating the nature of reality, we must also confront the fact that there are limits to what science can prove. For all its achievements, science cannot fully answer questions of meaning or existence, questions that are essential to our experience of being. While we can describe how the universe operates at the quantum level, we still do not fully understand the role that consciousness plays in shaping that universe. As long as this gap remains, we will be left with the tantalizing mystery of how an observer-less reality functions and whether the universe truly requires our awareness to exist. In the next section, we will explore the relationship between consciousness and the cosmos, looking at how these unresolved questions might suggest a deeper connection between mind and universe. For now, though, we are left with the profound realization that the limits of science are as much about the questions we cannot yet answer as the ones we can. The nature of reality, it seems, is a mystery that may never fully be unlocked by scientific inquiry alone. Does reality need you to exist? As we reach the end of this journey, we find ourselves confronted with a question that lies at the very heart of existence. Does reality need your awareness to exist? It's a question that has echoed through the halls of science, philosophy, and mysticism for centuries, a question that invites us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the world around us and our place within it. We ventured deep into the strange world of quantum mechanics, explored the mysteries of consciousness, and grappled with the limits of what science can explain. Along the way, we've encountered paradoxes, theories, and insights that both challenge and inspire us. At the start, we asked whether the universe truly exists independently of us, or if it depends on our consciousness to manifest. The observer effect in quantum mechanics, with its strange and mind-bending implications, pointed us toward a reality where the act of observation seems to play a crucial role in shaping the world. In the quantum realm, particles exist in a state of possibility, a cloud of probabilities until they are measured or observed. This phenomenon hints at a universe that might not be as objective and fixed as we once believed. Could it be that our awareness is the key that brings reality into focus? Does the universe truly exist only when we witness it? As we explored the philosophical implications of this idea, we delved into solipsism, the notion that only our minds can be known to exist, and the universe we perceive might be nothing more than an illusion of our own making. This radical perspective forced us to confront the limits of our knowledge and to ask whether we can ever truly know if anything exists outside our minds. And yet, despite the allure of solipsism, we also encountered the notion of a shared, independent reality, a universe that exists beyond us, shaped by its own rules, waiting for us to discover it. But then came the speculative horizon of the simulation hypothesis, where the boundaries between science fiction and cutting-edge physics blur. Could it be that the reality we experience is nothing more than an elaborate simulation? If we are in a simulation, then could our awareness be the mechanism through which we interact with this artificial world? If consciousness plays a role in the creation of reality, could the very universe itself be a construct, a program designed by a higher intelligence? All these ideas, quantum mechanics, solipsism, the simulation hypothesis seem to suggest that the universe is not merely a passive stage, but an active, dynamic process shaped by our perceptions, our awareness, and perhaps even our consciousness. The traditional view of an objective, independent reality seems to be at odds with the strange behavior of particles, the collapse of wave functions, and the role of the observer. If consciousness has the power to collapse the wave function, as some quantum interpretations suggest, does it imply that reality itself is, in some sense, created by us? Yet, as we discussed, this view raises profound questions. If consciousness can shape reality, does this mean that the universe is entirely dependent on us to exist? And if it does, what does that say about our place in the grand narrative of existence? Is the universe truly a product of our minds, or is there something? In the end, the question of whether reality needs us to exist is not just a theoretical debate. It is a question that touches the very core of who we are. As we look to the future of science and philosophy, the mystery of existence remains one of the greatest challenges we will ever face. And perhaps, in the pursuit of these questions, we will come closer to understanding not only the universe around us, but also the deeper mysteries of our own consciousness and what it means to be truly aware. The journey doesn't end here. The search for answers continues. But for now, let us leave you with this powerful thought. Does reality need you to exist? The answer, perhaps, lies within your own awareness, your own perception, and the infinite potential that you hold to shape the world around you